everyone. So in the last video we did type 1 and type 2, which were pretty simple. Now let's build upon that and let's move on to type 3 and type 4 in this video. So type 3 looks something like this. So let us call this type 3, example 3. I have x squared minus 8x minus 20 equal to 0. So it's already set equal to 0, and if you look at the left hand side carefully, it looks like a standard form, right? So when you are trying to solve something like this, you have few options. One is you can try to factor the left hand side, and that is something that I'm expecting you guys to know, but I'm kind of quickly going to go over some of the basic ideas of factoring a trinomial. And this one is a simpler one because the coefficient of x squared is just 1. So this is the easiest one for like factoring. So you can either use the factoring method or you can also use what we like to call it as a quadratic formula. So I have not talked about the quadratic formula yet because that is a little complicated and more time-consuming formula, which one has to use because sometimes you may not be able to factor, or you may not be able to use other methods that you have learned previously or things that you may already know. Then one has to rely, or one has to use the quadratic formula. Guys, I'm going to do that probably in the next video. But in this video, let us think about the factoring method of solving a quadratic function, which looks like this. Okay. Now, this again, I have classified these into type 3 and type 4. Both involve factoring, but this one is simpler than the next one. So how can we write the factors for this left hand side? And we know once we have two factors, and if we can get two factors, then we know how to solve it because we already did that in type 1 using the zero product property. Now to write the factors for this, guys, if you already know that, that's good. You can go ahead and start writing the factors and solve. Or if you are not sure or not confident with how to factor, then the idea is very simple. You start with this negative 20. You actually take this negative 20 and you multiply by the coefficient of x squared. But here the coefficient of x squared is simply 1, so it's not going to really matter. It's still going to be negative 20. So what you do is you have negative 20 and you try to break this negative 20. I mean, you want to come up with two factors of negative 20, not any two factors, two specific factors of negative 20 that add up to negative 8. Okay, so it's like getting the middle term from this term. Okay, so if you are not confident with writing different factors, or if you cannot come up with the right factors right away, that's fine. Start with the smallest possible number and then see which one works. So in this case, let us start with 2 and 10, right? Well, 2 times 10 is negative 20, and we need a negative 20, so I have to put a negative either in front of negative in 2 or 10, one of those, right? So if let's say I put a negative in front of 2, so negative 2 times 10 gives me negative 20, but what do I want here? I want these two numbers to add up to negative 8. I want these two numbers to add up to the middle term, right? This is also called splitting the middle term. That's the technical word, if you may, for this process of writing the factors, splitting the middle term. So this times this gives me this, but if I add these two, I don't get a negative 8. But what if I put this negative in front of 10? Well, if I multiply these two, I'll still get negative 20, but if I add them, I will get the middle term. So that's what we need, okay? So once we have the right factors, then what we do is, in this case, you simply start by actually drawing these two parentheses, which are basically drawn for two factors, and we write an x here and x here. And the reason why we write an x here, because we know that eventually when x times x, when we do x times x, or we distribute this, we get x squared, and that's what my first term is, okay? And the other two pieces that go right here and here, they all come from these two numbers. So there's a positive 2, so I'm going to write x plus 2. And there's a minus 10, so I'm going to write x minus 10. Okay. It's as simple as that. Now you have product of two quantities, or product of two factors equal to 0. And from the zero product property, we know that we have to set both of them equal to 0. So let's go ahead and set both of them equal to 0. So I have x plus 2 equal to 0, which gives me x equals to negative 2. That is one of the solutions. At the same time, we also have to set the other factor equal to 0. So x minus 10 equals to 0, and that gives me x equals to positive 10. So we have two solutions, negative 2 and 10. Guys, so far with all the types, type 1, type 2, type 3, we are actually looking at two, two real solutions, two solutions, okay? But keep in mind, we can have two solutions. We can also have one solution, or that could also be like a repeated solution, or there could be times when we may not be able to actually find a real solution. We'll see those types as well. Guys, this is type 3. So I'm going to actually end this video right here, and for type 4, we're going to look at the type 4 in the next video. Okay, because that also requires a little more extra work, but it is still based on factoring. It is still based on the idea of factoring what we used in this type. Okay, so I'll see you in the